I'm going to mute us because I just put on the starting the YouTube stream now. Well, you can hear me where I'm sitting, right? Today, I know y'all can hear me. Where was I give you? It's usually, I can see that the microphone is moving. The webinar is now live.
If you guys will be unmuted.
Microphone's available.
Okay. It's 5:30, so I'll call this meeting of the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors to order. Randy, will you take roll, please?
Sure. Supervisor Lewis.
Present.
Supervisor Day.
Here.
Supervisor Ayers.
Here.
Supervisor McDaniel.
Here.
Chairman Lyons.
Here. We will now have an invocation followed by the pledge of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we ask for your continued blessing, healthy and safe, and to give us the strength and wisdom to make the decisions that are best for the citizens of Rockbridge County. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States.
Republic, which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with justice for all. While the room will be open to the public, due to the size of the meeting room and social distancing requirements, no more than 10 attendees, in addition to the county staff, will be allowed into the room at one time, per the Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia Executive Order 63. All persons over the age of 5 that do not have a precluding medical condition are asked to wear a face covering. We will hold citizen comments near the beginning of the meeting. We'll do our best to take citizen comments remotely. There are 2 options for citizens to offer comment. You can join by telephone. You may dial in on one of the numbers listed on the county website. Webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, which is also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press the raise hand button on the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you are calling in by phone. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing and hearing none, we will move on to the recognitions and presentations. And I believe Ms. Hoke is here.
Good evening. Last year, the Board of Supervisors, I'll take this off. Okay. Last year, the Board of Supervisors adopted a Years of Service program that is intended to recognize and reward the dedication of staff. The program provides for recognition of staff longevity milestones each December at a regular meeting. Staff reaching a 5-year milestone will be presented a certificate of achievement, appreciation, and an award of $50 for their first 5-year milestone and an additional $25 for each 5 years of service. For example, an employee reaching a 15-year milestone would receive $100, so it's $50 for the base and then $25 for every additional 5 years. Awards are calculated in gross amounts so that employees will receive the full amounts to account for the taxes taken out. And most importantly, the recognition includes a certificate memorializing the years of service to the county. Typically, staff would be here, but due to the pandemic, we've asked them not to attend the meeting to keep the numbers in the room low. And we will distribute these on an individual basis. Mr. Suter will do that. The following employees have reached a service milestone this year. Lisa Connor in the recycling department, 5 years of service. Myself, 5 years of service. Steve Johnson, recycling department, 5 years of service. Earl Tyler, recycling department, 5 years of service. Ruby Moore in fleet services, 10 years of service. John Martin, Parks and Recreation, 20 years of service. And Wayne Nicely, Parks and Recreation, 30 years of service. A copy of Mr. Nicely's certificate was included in the packets as an example of the certificates that'll be distributed to staff. And the recommendation is to recognize these staff members for their service and direct the county administrator to remit certificates of milestones and appreciation to staff.
Thank you, Ms. Hope. We appreciate everything you've done to make this happen. And congratulations on your 5 years of service.
Thank you.
And please share with everyone as you distribute the certificates, the board's appreciation.
Absolutely, thank you.
Now it's time for citizens' comments. Is there anyone signed up electronically to speak? Anyone wishing to speak?
Not seeing any hands raised.
No hands raised, no one signed up. So we will move on to approval of the November 19, 2020 joint school board minutes and the November 23rd, 2020 regular supervisors meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review them? If so, I'll look for a motion to approve. So I have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Mr. Lewis? Aye. Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Consideration of the school appropriation resolution, Mr. Bolster.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. If you go to your board docs packet, you'll see that there's an appropriation resolution related to the school division. There was a couple items in there. One is a carryover grant from a prior fiscal year, and then also an appropriation of their second round of CARES Act money. Just as a note, this is to be expended by December 30th, and that was part of their agenda when their board met last week. So with that, recommendation is to approve the appropriation resolution as presented.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bolster? Part of his recommendation.
I move to approve.
Have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Lewis? Aye. Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. County financial package.
Okay, if you again transition to the next item in your board docs packet, you'll see there's the first item is a memorandum for activities amongst the Commissioner of the Revenue, Treasurer, and Fiscal Services Department. So from Mr. Weitzel, you can see there are 6 items listed. Most of these are fairly common from month to month. I know over the last few months, there's been a discussion about getting forms ready for calendar year 2021, business license, personal property forms, and so forth. He did want to mention that he is advertising a position that was vacated back in August. And so I believe that is out on the street. He's also preparing he and the staff are preparing a supplement for personal property. That'll be supplement number 1. And then for real estate, he's also preparing a second supplement as well. If there's no questions for Mr. Weitzel, I'll go ahead and transition to Ms. Travato's 5 items. She She and her staff continue to collect delinquent personal property taxes. As we all know, second half real estate was due on December 7th. Along with this real estate taxes being due, they did notice a high volume of folks paying online with the credit card option. And so we will work together on the fact that her cost on that particular budget line is going to exceed what she had budgeted. But again, there's a revenue behind it moving forward. She did continue the debt set-off collections. As you can see in the report, there's 14 individuals that are linked with this program. And should they go through, it'd be about $4,197 collected to the county. And then she's also doing some delinquent files to register for the new debt set-off claims at the end of the calendar year. If there's no questions, I'll go ahead and transition to information for the Fiscal Services Department. The first item up is just an update on the CIP. If you happen to pull that up, you'll notice on the first page where it's a summary of the CIP worksheets. There was a recommendation at the last meeting to bump out the 3 remote site projects, collection center projects. So those were all bumped out 1 year. So South River, Forge Road, and then the Rockbridge Creek, Rockbridge Baths projects. They were all bumped out to 23, 24, and 25 respectively. We also had a request from the Fleet Services Director, Steve Kingery. He is requesting a AC recharge and recovery machine for vehicles. And one of the challenges that he's starting to see is that as these newer models are coming in, he does not have the type of equipment that is proper for the new vehicles that are coming in. And so it's a fairly small one. I don't have it right in front of me. I believe it's around $6,400 in the CIP. That would be sourced from a transfer from the general reserves should this be approved moving forward. At this point, if there's any questions, staff is available to answer those on the draft CIP. If there's any questions that come up amongst the board members moving forward, we would just ask that that would be forwarded to County Administrator, Mr. Suter, and staff will then do our best to answer those questions. With that, the next steps are to bring this back to the board at the first meeting in January and request that the board do a provisional adoption of the CIP. And then we'll bring it back. Right now, the budget adoption meeting is planned for April 26th. So that would include both the CIP and the operational budget of the general fund. With that, again, I'm here to answer any questions that you all may have.
I've got one, a deep dive into the Ocean Collection Center, which you may not know the answer to, but looks like there's a new container purchase. Do we know what that was? Is that a trash or a tires? Do you know what that one is for?
I'm not sure about that one.
Just wondering.
Is it
It's
in the,
It's in the CIP.
No,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
okay.
guys,
Bill, switch it. Completely switch it.
we have a line for replacing the containers, and typically what we do is when the director and the contractor, CNS, determine that one is beyond repair, they'll recycle that one and then get a new one. So we've got a couple containers every year that we generally put in because they get a lot of wear and tear. That's probably what it is.
Yes, that's correct. Okay, if there's no questions on the CIP update, then we'll go ahead and transition to the line chart that's in your report. Just some key points that you'll see. You'll notice that revenues are notably higher than anticipated. The bulk of that is related to the fact that we are completing our transfers from the CARES Act money in support of public safety salaries and benefits that's linked to the presumptive clause in the CARES Act. And so that is driving that forward. So just as a number, that particular one is $2,349,616 in CARES Act transfers through November. With that, on the expenditure side, we did come down a little bit lower than anticipated for the month of November. A lot of that was linked to the school division transfer. Typically, it's around 1.1 to 1.5 million in November, and it was noticeably less. It was about 600,000. And so that's just more of a cash flow. They were able to get sources from other, or funding from other sources, and didn't need as much from the county for the month of November.
Is CARES Act expenditure included in these expenditures?
No, sir. No, sir. That would be in a separate fund. Yes, sir. There's no other questions on the line chart, then what we'll do is transition to the appropriation resolution. And so you can see there's 3 items that are on there. The first one is the Technology Trust Fund. And you may recall I mentioned this, I believe, the last time this was brought up. They have some new staff up at the comp board. And so instead of us receiving that money up front, the request is to expend the money. The clerk of the circuit court will then submit that to the comp board, and the county will be reimbursed accordingly. The second one, the $1,283,916. You may recall this from earlier in the month. The board approved setting aside about that amount, 1.283, to support projects, the Route 60 East Corridor project that was not funded by a revenue bond back in 2018. And so we had set that money aside, waiting until the financing that was sitting in escrow was liquidated. And so they're at that point. You'll see that here in a little bit. It's in the bills list, or not in the bills list. I have to walk it on. But anyway, we have the source of money. It's been set aside since back in March. The next one is the revenue sharing payment for Lexington. And so just recently, I received the calculation from our external auditors. And the calculation for this year's annexation payment was less than was more than projected in the budget. And what I found looking at the difference between last year and this year is that we were forecasting that the non-local property tax would go down notably over that last 4 months of FY 2020. And what we found is that 6 of the 8 did go down notably, but 2 did not. So sales and use. And then also the reclamation taxes were actually up 273,000 compared to last year. And so we were off about 2.3% on that budget line. So this is one that's going to be funded from unassigned reserves. The next item that you'll see is the CARES Act Fast Track Fund. And so you guys recall the county received $770,000 from the state to fund projects in coordination with BART Connects. And so we have that money, and so that this needs to be expended by December. And so we are working in coordination with BART to make that happen this month. And so if I could just get a nod on that, we do not have the invoices from BART at this time, but we are anticipating either this week or no later than next week to get either one invoice or invoices to pay for the project work they have completed. So it's going to be basically done out of cycle. So I just kind of need a nod that the board is giving me the thumbs up, or staff to do that. Doesn't have to be a roll call vote.
Okay. Everyone good with that? See, not. Okay.
Okay. So I had mentioned about the PSA payments. They were able to provide me a request for $237,784.27 on Friday. And so with the financial package being done on Thursday, it's not in your bills list. So I'm asking to add that to the appropriation resolution. So it primarily just impacts the totals. So you all should have gotten a handout with the updated resolution. And so the general fund bills actually moved to $998,805.99. And part of that also is we did receive a credit on a invoice. If you were to go to page 8 on the bills list, you'll see a line under courthouse, combined courthouse for Newegg. And so we got a credit recently of $34.41 on that particular invoice. So those two combined make that adjustment on the general fund amount. So total county bills goes from 845,107.36 to 1,082,857.22. And total all bills is now 1,408,734.83. So if there's no questions for staff, the recommendation is to adopt the appropriation resolution with those modifications, primarily to the bills list.
Any questions? Hearing none. Heard the request. Do we have a motion for approval?
I move that we approve paying the bills.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis? Aye. And the chair votes yes.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. On to the overview of the Route 11 pedestrian study. Mr. Slade?
Yes, sir. Good evening. The next agenda item pertains to the overview of the Route 11 pedestrian study. The Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission, CSPDC, and the Virginia Department of Transportation, VDOT, reached out to the Office of Community Development to inquire about the interest level in performing a small area study on the flow of pedestrian traffic and explore what modifications could be implemented to improve the pedestrian traffic on North Lee Highway. Periodically, the need for additional crosswalks and further extensions of the sidewalks on East Midland Trail and the North Lee Highway area corridors come under discussions. At the November 13th, 2019 joint meeting with the City of Lexington and Rockbridge County Planning Commission, the need for the sidewalk extension in these areas was discussed and set as a priority for staff to further explore. This study pertains to the North Lee Highway area. The purpose of tonight's agenda item is to review the study area, present the scope of the study, review the time frame, and review potential funding sources that are available. Moving forward, we feel like it would be beneficial to receive input and direction from the board. With that, I'd like to introduce Ms. Ann Cundy, Director of Transportation with the CSPDC, and Mr. Zach Beard, Transportation Planner with the CSPDC, to review details of the study. They're not joining us physically, but they are in Stanton, and we're currently promoting them from attendees to panelists. There's Ms. Cundy, and we're doing the same for Mr. Beard. With that, I'll turn it over to Ann because she was on to do the first part. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Sladen. It's nice to see you all tonight in this new format. I've been there in person with you, but it's been a while, so I'm glad to join you again. Chris, thank you for that introduction. We are pleased to be working with Rockbridge County on this small area study. I wanted to take a couple of minutes to tell you a little bit about that program. Each year we receive a grant from VDOT to fund our rural transportation planning program. That's $58,000 each year from VDOT. We match that with $14,500 in local match, which comes from our member locality assessments, all of the non-urbanized ones, which includes Rockbridge County and Lexington, as well as Buena Vista. Part of our rural transportation planning work program each year is to fund what we call a small area study. Thank you, Zach, for bringing those slides up on the screen. This small area study focuses on roadway safety and operations. So in the past, we have funded studies like looking at exit 205 at Rafine. We worked with the county and VDOT on that study, which, as you know, led to a successful smart scale application and funded project to improve the off ramps and Rafine Road at that interchange. In, I guess, more recent past, we took a look at the intersection of 220 and 615 in the village of Hot Springs in Bath County to address pedestrian accommodations and turning movement safety at that little intersection. This past year, we developed a pedestrian master plan for the town of Elkton up in Northeast Rockingham County. And all of these have led to either smart scale applications or applications to VDOT's Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP. Revenue sharing, of course, is another option. But these are the three big now competitive funding programs that VDOT has for localities to fund projects, including the kind of pedestrian accommodation projects that we're going to be evaluating and ranking here on US 11, just north of the city of Lexington. Maybe I will pause there and see if any members of the board or those present have any general questions about our rural transportation planning program or our small area studies. Okay, I'll take that silence as golden. And from there, I'm going to hand it off to Zach to walk you through some of the background for this study and what we are proposing to do in our scope of work.
All right, thank you, Anne, and many thanks to the board for your time this evening. I'm just going to start out with providing a general overview of the project and how we got here, and kind of build off the introduction that Mr. Slayton provided us and just providing that context. So back in October, VDOT, the county and the city of Lexington staff identified that this particular corridor along Route 11 had potential to be the subject of a pedestrian study. The identified need was based on several things. One, a lack of pedestrian facilities along the stretch of Route 11, anticipated future growth along the corridor, specifically commercial growth. The hotel, Starbucks, et cetera, could potentially come in. Future VMI related development, and the idea of creating a continuous pedestrian network between the city and reaching out into commercial destinations into the county. Anecdotally, it was noted that this area is frequented by students both from the high school and VMI, folks walking to and from their place of work, and also people just crossing the road at places with no crosswalks. So as a result, it was determined that this segment might be a good candidate for pedestrian improvements to include sidewalks, potentially shared use paths, crosswalks, basic pedestrian infrastructure to ensure people can get from point A to point B. So based on all those observations, consulting with VDOT, the county and the city, the CSPDs drafted a scope of work to outline this potential study. And we submitted the draft of the scope to the county and the city the first week of December. Just taking a look at the study area, this light cream yellow line that you see kind of in the middle of the map there, that's a 0.8 mile study area. So it extends just looking from north to south along 11 from Lexington Crossing Shopping Center through the I-64 interchange and then down to the College Square Shopping Center south of the interchange. And it also includes some adjacent roads there as well. So this segment has a fairly high volume of commercial entrances. Pedestrians typically originate, or their trips typically originate from the city, Greenhouse Road, Maury River Road, to commercial destinations along Route 11. Obviously, as you know, that this corridor has several points of interest to include the high school, the National Guard Armory, several Rockbridge area transportation system stops, VMI multi-use trail, etc. The only existing sidewalk is there looking south in that orange line there. You can see how it abuts up to our study area. And there's also an existing path that roughly connects the high school to the Route 11 intersection there at that 7-Eleven. So the scope is divided into 4 main tasks, fairly straightforward: data collection, analyzing that data and taking that analysis and making some recommendations, and also some project coordination as well. And to that, this process will be informed greatly by the project study team. So this will minimum include the county and city staff, the PDC and the VDOT. However, ideally, we would like to have this study team represent a broad range of stakeholders with interests along the corridor to include city council or board of supervisors members, folks from VMI or WNL, law enforcement, citizen advocates, business associations, neighborhood associations, etc. So this study team will have a large role in task 2, which I'll talk about in more detail shortly, in analyzing the data and helping us determine how projects are identified. So for the first task, the main questions we're trying to answer with the information that we're collecting is we're trying to understand how many people are walking the corridor, where are they walking from, where are they walking to, understand any safety issues related to walking the corridor. We also want to understand the site constraints in the area, such as right-of-way or utility conflicts that may impact the cost of any potential projects. Understand what new development may happen and what impact that could have on future pedestrian demand. There's also a qualitative aspect to this as well. So while we're using data such as actually counting the number of pedestrians, we'll also be going out, talking to local businesses, talking to the study group and getting their observations on really characterizing the pedestrian activity. We've actually, as part of our existing conditions data collection, we've already actually conducted one infield interview where we went out, set up both north and south of the I-64 interchange and did some pedestrian counts for the entire day. And we can go into that more during our kickoff meeting. So looking at the second and third tasks, task 2 analyzes the data to determine the project type and location. The study team will establish the criteria that will be used to evaluate potential projects. So this could include, criteria could include how well a project meets safety concerns, how well it meets costs, such as project length, utility, right-of-way impacts, etc. So overall, this task will be looking at establishing the best routing paths and locations for pedestrian facilities along Route 11 and adjacent roadways. And we'll also be looking to determine the best pedestrian crossing locations along Route 11. So this leads into task 3, which is basically just a list of potential projects and their associated costs to address the area's pedestrian needs and serve as a baseline for future grant applications. So this is about a 5-month process when we start this project in earnest in January of 2021 with that kickoff meeting. So we're already kind of in our preliminary data collection phase. And looking ahead, we hope to have the first draft complete in March and the final draft complete in May. So in summary, it's about a 5-month process. We're looking to kick this off in January. We're looking to identify the best projects for the right areas at the right time. Input from the study group and at this kickoff meeting next month will really be important for us to understand which projects can best address the needs in this study area. And we want to identify the projects that can really streamline the grant application process, which Ann was referring to before with the suite of VDOT application options that they have. So we want to make this process easier for the county going forward, when considering those future funding alternatives. So I'll hand it over to Ann. I think she's going to speak a little bit more about those alternatives and options.
Great. Thank you, Zach. So to elaborate on that final bullet, we want the county to walk away with this study and its recommendations so that you have this prioritized list of projects to advance to funding and construction. That is very much VDOT's stated goal for funding our rural transportation program and what we really hope to see. I think we all probably would love to see sidewalks along this entire corridor, but we recognize that doing so in one fell swoop is cost prohibitive. And so that's why we are going to lay out this analytical process for making sure that we identify the most critical connections to make first. I want to, note that we have a good example here in Augusta County, so your neighbors to the north in Verona, which I was about to say is a place, but it's not even a village, it's just a place. But Verona has plenty of pedestrian destinations along a fairly similar commercial strip on US 11, as well as Laurel Hill Road, which takes you out towards the interstate and exit 247, and was lacking sidewalks and crosswalks. And over the course of 3 different applications to the TAP program, the Transportation Alternatives Program, they funded the preliminary engineering and design, then the first chunk of construction funding, and then the second bit. So across 3 different TAP applications and funding cycles, they spread out their timeline and their match obligations, which may be a decent model to emulate here. But Mr. Sladen asked me to talk just a little bit greater length about the VDOT funding programs. So I'm going to start at 100% state match and work my way down. So Smart Scale, as some of you may know, is a program that can fund up to 100% of a project. And hey, Zach, would you mind ending the screen share just so I can see everybody on the screen? Thank you. Thanks. I'd like to be able to see everyone's face if I can. So that's a tremendous opportunity, especially when we're talking about really expensive projects. The downside of Smart Scale is that projects are funded in the 5th and 6th year of VDOT's 6-year plan. So you're waiting 5 to 6 years just to begin receiving the preliminary engineering and design funding. So at best, construction of your project is about 10 years out, which can feel like an awfully long time to wait if you have a clear and present need today. The Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP, is expressly designed to fund bike and pedestrian projects. It funds some other stuff too, but that is its main use. The city of Lexington got a small little TAP grant a couple of years back. It was actually Safe Routes to School, but they're using that funding source to make some improvements around Lilburn Downing Middle School for a point of reference. TAP is funded 80% federal and 20% local. And so the match is reasonable, if you can spread it out and plan for it over the course of a few years. And the beauty of this one is that if you make application in September of 2021 is actually when the next funding cycle comes up, you'll know by June of the following year, when the Commonwealth Transportation Board adopts the 6-year plan, whether you'll be funded for that next year. So the funding comes available, at least in VDOT world, almost immediately, so within a year. And then again, you can, if you're looking at a more expensive project, you could apply for just your preliminary engineering, just your PE, or just your PE and right of way, and plan that 2 years later, when TAP comes around again, you can apply for the construction. So that's another option. The third, which I'm not sure if or when Rockbridge County last did a revenue sharing project with VDOT, but that's 50-50 match. So, obviously your cash match obligation is greater. The beauty of revenue sharing is that it's the state matches state money. It's not federal. So that removes quite a few requirements related to environmental review, how you go through your bidding process, meeting all of your Title VI requirements as part of the construction process. So just a little bit less red tape with revenue sharing because you're not using federal dollars to fund that project. But we, along with VDOT, both the residency with Susan and with the district planning staff here in Stanton, are here to assist the county in mapping out that strategy, be that as it may. We do want to note that we set up our timeline for this study so that you would have projects ready to submit to TAP in August of 2021. If you decide to pursue that option, we wanted to be sure that you would have some projects ready to go for this upcoming round. So Smart Scale and TAP are on opposite years. So Smart Scale just came around in 2020. The odd years are TAP and revenue sharing. In even years are Smart Scale. So Chris, I hope that covered it in terms of how some of those funding programs work and what your strategy might be. But we are certainly happy to answer any other questions that the board may have.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Was there any consideration as to sidewalks from Lexington East on Route 60 to Stonewall Square Shopping Center?
We would be happy to evaluate that as another project with the county. Our understanding from staff and the VDOT residency was that this was perhaps the more pressing need today, but it would lengthen our timeline to try and review both corridors in one study. But that is certainly a corridor that we would like to work with you on.
All right, thank you.
I do. The area that we're currently talking about, Chris, I believe it's one of our, I may be using the wrong term here, opportunity zones for our economic development.
I believe that is correct, from the city of Lexington to the Walmart area.
Yes, so that doesn't impact this one way or another necessarily.
Not that I know of.
That it is defined as that.
I don't think that would have any input on the study itself.
And yeah, I mean, it's an area that I drive constantly, and that citizens have brought to my attention would be a good area to have some cost available housing. So, just talking about future development and more pedestrian traffic, that would be something that I sort of see that area as getting and using. just as an aside. And then jumping towards the end, of course, of what the results are, we keep mentioning crosswalks. You know, there's already a lot of stoplights through there. There's already a lot of breakup of traffic. It is a 4-lane, you know, state road. The crosswalks, we should have them, but you know, there's already one at East Lexington Bridge, or two, I don't know, square, if you want to put it that way. So, you know, that's just part of it. Once we see the results, obviously that would drive when and where those are needed, but I'm not sure we need a whole lot of crosswalks. You know, I mean, we need some, but we need to make sure that's where most of the traffic is, so that we don't further impede the traffic, which is what the roads were built for. Just a thought that I had as we go along. And then the last question was, the document we got said, in cooperation with county, city of Lexington, and VDOT, is the city contributing funds to this as well?
They've contributed as has everybody in the CSPDC district. This is a pot of funds that they pulled from, and as noted, they did the last one in Elkton. So the city has contributed in that way through their dollars that they put in.
But they also contributed to Elkton.
Exactly.
We did.
And we did too.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, this is kind of, you know, our turn on this. This is a project that.
But it's a county project.
Yes.
Is what I was just wanting to make sure. When the time comes for funding or discussing that, you know, that's going to be up to us.
Right, because it would be fully within the county. The study starts actually in the county at the end of the sidewalk that's already in.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, because I just wasn't sure. I just wanted to know.
That's right. And to be clear, the county is contributing any additional funding to this study. We pull that local match for the VDOT grant from our general fund, which is in part funded through assessments. So.
Yeah, and I guess I was jumping towards the projects when we get there. So.
That's right. No, we are merely making sure that the city is part of our study team, so that we're coordinating with them, since the transportation infrastructure leaves the city, crosses the bridge, and then continues onto the north. And we already know that there's quite a lot of pedestrian traffic from the north end of the city into the county.
And Mr. Chairman, may I address Supervisor Day's question? So Supervisor Day and everybody, there was a study some years back on the area that you referenced, from essentially what, you know, Kentucky Fried Chicken out east, out 60. So that does exist, and I'd be glad to share that with you. It's just nothing's really been done on that yet. That involved a traffic study as well, but it also included consideration for pedestrians.
That's right.
Are there any other questions from the board members?
Well, I guess just a clarification on that one for me is, if there's already a study that exists, would there be a need for another one on that, if we were interested in that area as well?
I don't think so. I mean, you can always extend a study and retool it a little bit, but there were multiple, as I recall, there were multiple options that were shown in that study. And it did involve some of the traffic backups that were going into Central Elementary and different things there. So it extended actually from up about Advance Auto all the way out to the shopping center, as I recall.
Right, but is it a current study, I guess is what I'm saying. Is it current enough to assess a need?
I don't think anything's probably changed that much. It's only, that study's only about probably 4 or 5 years old.
I guess 5.
Yeah. The only thing that might have changed is a little bit of traffic volume, but I don't know if that would change, change what came out of the study.
And I'll just piggyback off that.
That was the Route 60 East Corridor study, and that was primarily focused, Mr. Sugar is correct, it did have some pedestrian access information on it, but it was definitely geared towards vehicular access to and from the enterprise back to Lexington. But what I'm trying to say is this one's different because this is not focusing on vehicular traffic from Walmart and just different associated areas. This is focusing on pedestrian traffic. So the other one definitely focused on vehicular traffic.
All right.
So I guess to follow up on Ms. Ayers' question, in theory, we could drill down a little bit on those pedestrian origins, destinations, and critical gaps on Midland Trail at a future date, if that was desirable.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing that, we appreciate your presentation and look forward to hearing the results of your study.
Thank you. Would it be appropriate for the board to give us a thumbs up or an endorsement of this study and scope of work as we go forward?
Does anyone have a problem with this study going forward? Now would be the time to speak up.
The only question I have, and I believe it's been answered, but there is no financial responsibility to the county at this point, correct?
Correct. I think the only expense to the county will be after the study is done, if we choose to, how to choose to move forward to complete any projects that we might want to move forward with. So I take the silence that we're endorsing this. I hear no objections, so does that give you what you need?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
You too. Mr. Suter, you want to give us an update on the Rockbridge area Department of Social Services office space?
Sure. The agenda, the board report in your agenda package pretty well sums it up. I won't read it. I'll just kind of summarize it. Essentially, social services, as everyone knows, has been looking for a way to either improve its existing space or find new space for years now, several years. And last year, the lease at their current site at the Woody Building was extended, and DSS, the board, contracted with Baskerville out of Lynchburg to do basically a space needs assessment, and then to look at potential options for new office space. And they received some interest, and in the form of I guess in the form of rough proposals. I don't know. I didn't see those proposals, but they did express some, or they shared with me and the two city managers. They shared a couple of the options that they were leaning toward, that they wanted to discuss. And subsequently at the last mayors and chairs meeting, Buena Vista brought up or wanted to revisit the idea of rather than having social services enter into contract or work with a private group, that the localities look at the potential for the localities joining together and either renovating a space or building a space for social services, and have one of the entities own that, whether it be an EDA, go through an EDA or something along those lines. So we discussed it and met with Director Clark and Board Chair Mr. Gilmore to talk with them about that. They subsequently wrote us a letter, which is attached to your board report. And I would simply like to re-energize the committee that was formed, the regional committee that was formed back in the summer of 2019, I believe. And I think we only really met once, but we got some good movement out of that. But in order to discuss this, my request would be that the board consider appointing 2 members to a committee that we can sit down and hopefully finally get some traction here.
I've been at a couple of the meetings. I think if we don't step up and get an ad hoc committee together, then nothing will get done.
But I hear you. I mean, I was working on this before you were, so it's 18 months. We still have these same questions that we had then. And the reason it's not pursued is because we don't know the fiscal impact in regards or in comparison to renting, because we can't seem to get an answer of what the state pays for.
We are getting
whatnot. So saying that just expressing some frustration, but then I thought the study would finally answer these questions. What does the study say? The study would be giving them the recommendation of the best path to go. Does this?
I think what's happened is they were given this path, but then again, Buena Vista came forward and said, well, can we go back and revisit and look at the option of a locality owned building? And we are getting a little more traction, a little more information about that now. In fact, I just got some more this morning, but it'd be a good discussion to have regionally.
So Baskerville, the result of the study from Baskerville was go find a place to rent?
No. It was to, they had a couple of, I believe they had 3 that they were considering, three locations that would be sort of a build to suit or a renovate to suit. And when they came back with that they wanted to consider those 3, that's when Buena Vista came back and said, can we revisit the idea of the localities doing it? And that re-energized the question of, it added a question too of how much will the state pay for a locality rental? So they're leasing it from a locality. Technically, they don't pay lease, but they do pay for the cost of the building, which we're looking at as being, if you did something as a government or a group of governments, that to pay for the debt service. That's what we're trying to investigate now.
All of which I would have thought the study would have addressed. Which we
no, the study was a space needs assessment.
Okay, I don't think how you have space needs without knowing where the space is and how you pay for it.
Well, I think it's important to get the ad hoc committee so that we can get this information when it comes and not try to go back and get social services to provide it to us. I mean, there's a communication gap, and then, at least we're getting it firsthand and can help bring accurate information back to the board, as well as have a say in the direction they need to go, because you can do all the studies you want, but the people who get it won't make decisions. Then that's why we haven't progressed anymore, and that's why I see the need for this committee, and I think it will be an important committee because it's going to be a big undertaking.
And it's a large.
And if it's done correctly, it might not be as big as financial burden as people think. So that's why I think we need to get 2 people on the ad hoc committee. I think one should be the chair and then another member.
Thank you, volunteer. I'm not sure I would be the best candidate.
Are you asking for volunteers?
I'd love to have a volunteer.
I'm sorry?
I'd love to have a volunteer. Was that you volunteering, Ms. Ayers?
I'll be happy to, yes, you have a volunteer.
Okay. Anybody else on the board have any objection to the chair and Ms. Ayers being part of the ad hoc committee? Hearing none, there you go, Mr. Spencer.
Thank you.
Good.
This next consideration of a rabies clinic at Goshen, Rafine, and South River Volunteer Fire Department. This is something that code makes us do. Is that right, Mr. Stewart?
That's correct. It's a requirement that a clinic be held every 2 years. And we're really fortunate to have fire departments, volunteer fire departments that will open their facility to do it, and veterinarians and their staff that put these on. But it is a requirement of the state that the local governing body, and I believe the health department both approve this. Typically, it is by location and date. That's what the requirement is, but in reality, we don't. Scheduling those is often difficult to really pin the date down. So in order to just do it for the year, we just ask that you would approve the location, and then we'll date to be determined.
Okay, if there's no objections to rabies clinics by the board, I'd like a motion to approve rabies clinics at Rafine, South River, and Goshen Volunteer Fire Departments during the 2021 year. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second? Oh, sorry.
Any further discussion? Mr. Lewis, Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Now we have Chief Ramsey with us tonight to present a staffing consideration.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Present to you tonight the request for 2 additional staff members that we're going to call a floater position. We've discussed it with the Fire Rescue Committee back in November, and then the Finance Committee as well since then. But much like Mr. Sitter a minute ago, I won't read the whole agenda item that was presented. I can give you the Cliff Notes version of it. But with our current situation, our current department and staffing, as you know, we staff Carrs Creek, Fairfield Rescue, and Glasgow Rescue Squad 7 days a week, 6A to 6P, with there's 4 members at each station, 2 per shift at each ambulance. And currently we're at minimum staffing is what we'll call it, every day that we only have enough staff to fill the seats that are required in the ambulances. So with that, if someone needs to take off vacation, sick, death in the family, what have you, we've typically, as you all know, that we do have a small group of part-time staff that fill those vacancies as well. Of late, we've had some difficulty filling those vacancies with part-time staff due to the increase of the vacancies, whether it be family sickness or what have you, which when we don't have part-time staff available in the short term, and by short term, I mean when someone calls in at 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning with a sick child, themselves sick, that kind of thing, then it typically reverts back to Captain Moore or myself to cover initially, depending on what Lieutenant Andrews is, the training lieutenant. If he doesn't have EMT class going on at the high school or his adult EMT class, then he fills his shift as well, or we kind of piece it together to make it throughout that day. With that, one of the concerns that I have, as well as Captain Moore, with the potential COVID-19 exposures or contracting the COVID-19 virus, as you know, if one of our staff are exposed to that or contracts the virus, that's about 10 days, 10 to 14 days, depending on what scenario we have, that someone is out. And our staff, they do a great job daily wearing their PPE. Whether they're transporting a patient or not, adhering to the county guidelines that we set in place some time back. But one of the things that's increasing is, as you all know, the amount of COVID cases that we encounter on a daily basis, transporting these folks to the hospital on a regular occurrence. And again, one of my concerns is that we're going to be faced with a challenge of not having the personnel to meet the staffing requirements that we need should someone be out for an extended period of time, and not just one, but if one's going to go, whether they get contracts the virus, then the other one potentially would be exposed. So there's going to be an amount of time where we're going to have a whole crew potentially out of service. We hope that doesn't happen. We've done a very good job so far of late of ensuring that, and like I say, our staff are doing a great job with that. But one of my concerns is to be able to provide that level of protection. And along those same lines, if we run into that scenario of being able to keep our part-time folks to fill our regular vacation requests that are already approved, or late sickness, death in the family, things like that. So as in the agenda item 2, only filling those spots, but in the rare occasion, as you can see, I've presented some information to where the call outs that we've had up to this point that have been non-COVID related in 2020. And you can see where Captain Moore, Lieutenant Andrews, and myself have filled a lot of shifts or partial shifts during the year. And then the other items that this person would do, or these folks would do, is assist with EMT class when needed, whether it be at the high school or nighttime, and quickly fill the unexpected call outs on a regular basis. And then that would reduce the need for calling on part-time and that kind of thing. And it also eventually reduce the need to hire additional part-time staff. While I understand this is kind of a mid budget request for the remainder of FY21, we do have a little bit room in the budget to reprogram some funds from the Lexington Shared Services contract to carry out the rest of the year. If 2 were approved, then it would be a total of about 59,158 to carry us out for the 12 months of the rest of the year. We did have a surplus in the shared services agreement based on the impacts due to the virus, so that kind of thing, that Lexington's numbers were down a bit. So we do have the funding to carry out the rest of FY21 year if you would so consider that request. And then for FY20 would simply be a budget request moving forward for FY22.
So the request is, I'm looking at, is for 2?
Yes, sir. 2, and they would go.
And the funding was 59,158 for the
remainder of FY21. Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Could I make a point too? I just want to make absolutely clear, you understand, it's not having 2 people available at the same time. It's having 1 position per shift. So you'd have 1 position on any given shift. It's not 2.
Yeah, 2 people. So we have 2 different shifts, an A and a B shift, the way that they rotate 7 days a week. So 1 person would be on each shift. And if we need to shift that around, if we had 2 folks on the same shift that were had to quarantine or something like that, then we would put them together, move the scheduling around and make that happen.
Did the finance committee, have they reviewed this? They have a recommendation?
Recommendation, I believe, is to approve.
Just want to make sure you have.
Yes, sir. It's public safety. I mean, it's one of those things.
I don't disagree. I just want to make sure you all saw it. Anyone have any questions?
The I believe from the finance committee, the concern was noted that, while we may be able to cover the cost within our budget this year, the uncertainty of what the budget for next fiscal year looks like, it'd just be a decision that's made during the budget season. As with all other costs.
Mr. Paulson, you have? No. No, sir, I think. Oh, okay, no, Chief Ramsey's doing a great job. Communicating the request. All right, any more questions or discussion?
The only, and not necessarily, it's sort of around this issue, but I know several months ago, we were contacted by the Glasgow Rescue Squad about inability to answer calls. And I know that we asked for some information and have been working with them. At some point, I guess, I know Chief Ramsey's not putting him on the spot to address it tonight, but perhaps in some upcoming meetings, that can be brought back to us to let us know how they're doing.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, Mr. McDaniel. We have a fire rescue committee meeting on Friday that will report out since September. We have a full 3-month data range that we will present to the fire rescue committee on Friday at 2:00. And then that will be made available to the rest of the board also, but plan on next month presenting that. I haven't talked to Mr. Suter yet, but that was the plan moving forward.
Thank you.
Got any more questions? I'd like to hear a motion.
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Yes, sir.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any more discussion? Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Stairs?
Yes.
Today?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Mr. Bolter, CARES Act summary.
Good evening again. I do not have a laptop to bring up the file that's in your board docs packet. So if you will, just go to the second document that's in there. It's a PDF file. And what we'll do is, moving forward, I'd like to actually start at the bottom after I get through this agenda report, because the bulk of the CARES Act money is linked to the public safety presumptive provision. So you may recall there was a presentation back on the 10th of November where there was an update given on the CARES Act spend plan. We've got nearly $4 million in CARES Act money, which you all have known for several months now. Back on December 8th, Mr. Suter received an email on behalf of the Commonwealth Secretary of Finance, Mr. Aubrey L. Lane Jr. And in that email, it included a document, a letter that provided guidance about the deadline for local governments to expend and or return any unspent balances of CARES Act money. And so I just have one excerpt from that. I'll just read it. The governor is going to allow local governments to continue paying qualifying expenses until January 15th, 2021. And after January 15th, 2021, local governments are expected to follow the procedures outlined in this memorandum and to complete the return of unspent CRF balances no later than January 22nd, 2021. So as you all have known from the start, the plan was to properly allocate and expend the spend plan which was for the full amount of CARES Act money. And so with that, I'll just go ahead and go to the PDF file. Again, I'll start from the bottom. So that section there that talks about public health and safety employee salaries, the presumptive provision. As Mr. Suter has explained right from the start, we have identified that as part of the spend plan is it was more of like an accordion. And then as we move forward, we would be able to flex that accordion based on how other expenditures go over the, the several months that we had this money. And so I will just highlight stuff that goes from March through November. We have completed those transfers from the CARES Act money to the general fund. So that would be fire and EMS, that would be sheriff office, and that would be the jail. One thing that we have not done from July to December is the allocation for the county's cost share on fire rescue with the city of Lexington. So you'll notice that it's about the 5th line down. I've got it from their finance director, Mr. Jake Adams, that they are estimating $186,663 in cost. You'll notice that we have it now is 0. And the reason being is that as we have been kind of flexing the accordion, it's been determined that at this point, we don't need to reimburse the county for that allocation. Because if we did, we'd obviously overexpend what we have received. Some of the stuff related to public safety that is outstanding is the December transfers for fire and EMS, for the sheriff's office and for the jail, and also for cost share on expenditures that are CARES Act related for the jail itself. And so we have some estimates in there, and so those, again, those could be flexed depending upon what actuals occur once we get through the month of December. With that, we'll just go ahead and transition back towards the top. And so if you kind of start to go down the list, I'll just go to the 4th one. That's the trailer, the fire rescue trailer. There was an initial budget that was a little over $10,000, and they were able to get a great deal on the project, and that's actually now down $1,750 down to $9,000. When you go to the next one, it's a couple down, the teleworking option. We had a pretty robust plan for improving teleworking capabilities, improving our cybersecurity position, and we have been actually executing those, but we did not get to the initial budget, which was about $317,000. So that's actually down $110,000, which again, if you go back to the public safety component, it doesn't hurt us because we have that flexibility. If you go to disinfection and sanitation materials and supplies, that's actually gone up 5,000, so from 20 to 25,000. The PPE, that's actually come down. We did not or have plans to expend as much as we initially thought, so that's down to 15. It's down 15,000 to 10. If you go to safe access to government, that's actually down just $1,051. And just an update on that. So I know you all received an email from Mr. Suter earlier today about some of the upgrades to this room for audio visual. There are some action items to complete, primarily just configuration of the devices and to test and then to train those. And so it is anticipated that either that'll be done this week or next week to include the training of staff. Also, the keyless entry, that is a project that is continuing. The contractor will be here this week to continue their responsibilities. We are estimating the project will probably be done early next week, but obviously definitely no later than December 30th. Building modifications based on actual expenditures, that was down 5,000 to 25,000. And then the local cost share for jail expenses was down 61,461, and that covers from March through November. So again, that was based on actuals that came in. So when we're looking at December for the jail at 49,029, that's really a rough estimate. We won't know that until they turn in bills at the end of this month. So with that, that's kind of a quick update on the spend plan for the CARES Act money. And again, the timing, right? The state is telling us we have to expend it by the 15th. So the board meets earlier that Monday. And so the plan is we'll bring the CARES Act expenditures that we are paying for transactions in December and get those checks cut. And the plan is to fully expend it based on our anticipated spend plan. So with that, I don't know if Mr. Suter has any add-ons. Okay.
No, there will be some additional changes. We've got, the courts have got their plan back from the Supreme Court of Virginia, their return to jury trial, and there were some adjustments that they asked for. And so we have been working to help them out with that, to see if there's any additional small costs associated there. Also got back with the town of Glasgow to get their full public safety payroll costs back. That was originally that was just trying to calculate here. It was originally 22,000, but that was just from March 1 through September 14th. So I've asked for the additional there and see what that total is going to be. I want to make sure that we cover all that. So there will be some of this, and like I say, the accordion factor will be in effect right up until December 30th, and then we'll bring you the final on January the 11th.
So, and then if you don't mind, just to add about the jail expenditures, especially the capital costs. So the purchase of the transport van, the insert that's related with that van has all been received, billed out between the local partners. The HVAC project was also completed, and we've actually billed out Lexington and Buena Vista and did our cost share this month as well. And the last piece was related to the commercial grade laundry units. And so that was taken care of earlier in the summer as well. So all the capital related efforts that involved coordination between the local governments for these jail expenditures have been completed.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Bolster? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir.
Appointments, we have no one yet for the Building Code Board of Appeals. So,
Had a good candidate, but they wouldn't accept.
well, let's get close to the holidays, maybe approach them again a week moment. Community Service Board, we'll look at those at the first meeting in January.
We've got two that you could do,
Okay.
and then one, I'll just explain. Sheriff Funkhauser was going to get back with us or with the board with a recommendation for a candidate in law enforcement in the sheriff's office to replace him when he steps off, which he would like to do. And he's still working on that, and he would like to get that to the board for consideration the first meeting in January. Mr. Brownlee and Mr. Sigler, though, are both willing to be appointed if the board wanted to.
Do you want to appoint them tonight so they can't change their mind?
Can we do the appointment for the sheriff's office?
No, you have to name a person. Yeah.
I'm fine either way.
Well,
I do them. I go ahead and do it.
that's what I'm saying. I'd be glad to have a motion to approve at least the two.
I move we approve Mr. Brownlee and Mr. Sigler.
All right, we have a motion to approve Mr. Brownlee and Mr. Sigler. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes?
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
And Mr. Day?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Any comments from any of the board members? Hearing none, I hope everyone enjoys the next few weeks and gets this.
Got staff reports.
Oh, I'm sorry, missed the staff reports. Everyone had a chance to review the staff reports.
Yes.
And can we have a motion to approve that?
Motion to approve as presented.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes?
Day,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Now, I wish everyone will have a restful couple of weeks, get to spend some quality time as much as they can with their families, enjoy the holidays, and look forward to seeing everybody in January. And I would love to have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Good, all in favor, say aye.
Uh,
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.